Welcome, welcome, welcome to our Friday installment of the Taylor Moore Show. I'm reporting to you live from, where am I today? Burkina Faso, a bunker there. That's the most I can disclose. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. We have a very special episode. It's going to be a little over the place, but I'd ask you to bear with me because I think you will learn some stuff or enjoy yourself. So the first thing I want to talk about before I started this episode, and I haven't shared this with my audience, I recently purchased a pair of Heelys. Now, for those of you who don't know Heelys, and this was a collaboration with Reebok, Heelys, well, I could say so much about Heelys. They're the future. I think walking is becoming obsolete, and I fancy myself as an early adopter of this technology, this lost, ancient technology of Heelys. I got an email from Heelys before I sat down to record this, and they said, "How was your experience with Heelys?" And I thought about it, and I don't think there is enough room in a Google email to lay out my appreciation for this emerging tech and the way it's changed my life. So instead of responding to that email, I've actually written a poem about my experience with Heelys that I'd like to share with you all. It's called Heelys, the Glider's Ode. The old ways they are done. They're dead. No longer is the footpath tread. For in my heel a secret wheel, a silent pledge, a better deal. The door-to-door sales pitch I flee. I don't walk, I just guarantee. A graceful, effortless, quick zoom. A whisper through the sterile room. The grocery run, the tedious queue. I shuss past you and then past you. A trolley pusher? No, not I. I'm just a human hoverby. My ankles cramp not, my knees feel new. My gait is smooth, my spirit too. So watch me roll a smug sly grin, the evolution from within. For why walk when the world can be a low-grade, indoor, wheel-based spree? Until I hit a tiny stone and crash land loudly, all alone. Just felt that was important to share. Admittedly, I don't wear these Heelys to work. I think that's something I'm working up the courage to do. But on my off days, I put them on before I go to breakfast. Because to me, now that I have Heelys, the very act of walking to the toaster to put in bread is a betrayal of what we have going on here. Why would I walk and expend that precious energy when I can just glide over to the toaster? These are existential questions I'm wrestling with for sure. I think the question of wheeling versus walking is one that concerns humanity and our species evolution. And I am just incredibly grateful to be at the forefront of this change. So that's all I'll say about that. I did want, for this episode, to take some time to review Little Bites. Really cancer in a bag. So I'm going to eat one of these. These are Entenmann's Little Bites. They are chocolate chip muffins. And I found them, and I just want to read, before I actually dive in and mindfully eat, I just want to describe what we're dealing with here. So it's a little plastic package. It's got a dog on the front holding muffins. I don't really understand the relevance of a dog with the muffins, but given these aren't actually real muffins and just chemicals, maybe there's something we don't know about the dog. These muffins are a mystery. So 190 calories, 150 milligrams of sodium, 7% your daily value, only 17 grams of sugar. Whoa. But the ingredients on the back, it's like a religious manuscript. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. Cocoa butter, soy lectin, invert sugar. Invert sugar. Pause. What does that mean? Invert sugar. Food starch modified corn, whey glycerin, mono and diglycerides. I love glycerides. Leavening with sodium acid pyrophosphate, baking soda, cornstarch, monocalcium phosphate, artificial flavors, salt, xanthan gum, sodium stearoyl lactolate, potassium sorbate, whey protein concentrate, soy lectin, cellulose gum, wheat starch. Yummy, yummy in my tummy. Holy shit. Wow. We're going to dive in. I mean, on an aside, you know what's interesting is with all this Ozempic stuff, there are actually food scientists developing ways to circumvent the suppression of cravings from Ozempic. They're doing things like pumping scents into bags of Doritos. So when you open them, you are more drawn in not by necessarily hunger, but by that olfactory sensation. They're designing chips, to be more crispy. The cartoon dogs are actually designing muffins to give you stomach cancer. Again, I'm just grateful to be here. Let's dive in. Immediately, the smell of chocolate hits your nose. I think I'm only gonna eat one, but I think what deeply unsettles me about these is, let's see the expiration date. December 21st. So in like 2 months. When you go to the bakery and you get bagels or a muffin, it is no longer good to eat after, I don't know, like 2 days. It starts getting a little stiff if you're not storing it properly. Months for this muffin. And it's moist when I take it out of the bag. I really don't want to know what kind of witchcraft that dog is practicing to create wet little muffins. I'm eating a wet muffin. All right, let's dive in. One moment. All right. It is undeniably delicious. That is true. It's a little morsel. And you know the saying, if you give a mouse a cookie, if you give Taylor a Little Bites mini muffin, he's going to ravage the whole bag. So it is taking an exercise of every fiber in my body to resist eating more of those little cancer pillows. All right, that was good. Thank you for joining me on that. And if you are entertained or curious about this podcast, please smash that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment. Suggest something I should talk about. I'm an open book. Now I'd like to talk about cigarettes versus vaping. Not quite an age-old question because vaping really just got into the mainstream, I want to say within the last 5, maybe 10 years, but really for me, it's felt like 5 years. Mark my words. Smoking cigarettes is more healthy than vaping. I've vaped. I've smoked casual cigarettes. These days, I am a Zen guy. Save the lungs, F the gums. But smoking cigarettes is much healthier. Whatever's in those vapes, dude, is cancer juice. Literally, we have no idea. It's like glycerol. It's not water. And I feel like it's just coating your lungs with gunk. Now, I'm not judging or being pious or holier than thou. But if you're vaping, just start smoking cigarettes. Like, let's bring that back. Honestly. Not a hill I'm necessarily going to die on, but I think when society allowed smoking everywhere, things were just cooler. On airplanes, in the office, dude. Like if you're a doctor and you're going to check up on a kid and you just spark up a lung cookie and yeah, pull down your pants. I gotta play with your nuts for a second. With a cigarette in your hand, that's kind of unstoppable. In my opinion. Anyway, so you got cigarettes versus vaping. I would advise cigarettes. But here's the thing about cigarettes. Smoking cigarettes is one of the coolest things ever. If you confidently pull out a cigarette at the train station and light it up, very cool. Very cool. If you're in your 20s. if you're in your 20s, smoking cigarettes is just a very cool thing to do. It's associated with rebellion, artistic types, a certain je ne sais quoi, if you will. Sue me. It's a statement. However misguided, it's a statement. Now, if you are in your 30s and smoking cigarettes, we need to have a talk because things are a little different. The perception sort of switches from cool rebel to someone who hasn't evolved, someone who's sort of chained to their past. It's no different than a high school graduate well into his 20s or 30s who still wears his letterman jacket. You just can't let go of the past. That's what I see when I see an older guy lighting up a cigarette. It's like, move on, grow up a little bit. Cigarettes are for the kids, man. Well, yeah, it signifies a nostalgic clinging to a past identity that no longer fits the setting. Move on. Pick up Zins. Like, that is acceptable. And until we bring back cigarettes to the mainstream where people are smoking on planes, you have policemen smoking, you have the teller at the bank being like, I'm going to get your money in a second, but do you have a light? Beautiful. That is society working as it should. And that is something I hope to be on the platform in the 2028 election, to bring back smoking. Okay, we've addressed smoking and vaping. Thanks for listening, and now we're going to dive into a topic that holds a special place in my heart, and that is dolphins. I'm not a huge, like, wild animal guy. I've actually seen a bear and been involved in a bear mace spray situation. What I'm talking about, though, is the fact that it is a federal law prohibiting U.S. citizens to convene with dolphins in open water. Why? Why, Uncle Sam, do you care if I'm canoodling with the dolphin in the Pacific or Atlantic? Out of your exclusive economic zone. Or actually, it would still have to be within their borders on the water. But if I want to play footsie with a dolphin in the ocean, that's my right to do so, sir. Federal officer. And here's the thing. Dolphins are one of the most intelligent species. They are sexual animals, for sure. They're very sexually aggressive. But they're also spiritual and very smart. The U.S. Navy keeps a pod of dolphins in San Diego that's trained to detect mines and probably other stuff, maybe backflips, or doing that little move where they have one little fin out of the water and they're just sort of cutting through waves. It's similar to the Blue Angels that the Navy flies over the beach. It's like, we'll take a look in the water. I'd like to introduce our aquatic dolphin sergeants here to do a little aquatic show. Just want to check real quick to make sure we're actually recording. Oh, we're so good. So yeah, dolphins, you cannot convene with them. What the hell? And here's another thing I found out. There is something called dolphin-assisted water birth. This is not to be misogynistic. This is not to instruct women on how to give birth, but hear me out. Midwives, most of the world, most of history, the way women gave birth is they squatted. Gravity guided the child out. Now we have women in hospitals laying on their back, paying 80 grand through insurance for a birth, and they're hit with an epidural. No shit, because they're having to push because they're on their back. They are birthing unnaturally. There are some practices with midwives where you give birth in water, and the child's first entrance into the world is through the vaginal canal and into the water. I think that's a beautiful thing. Did you know, and I don't have the exact numbers, but children born via C-section have higher rates of anxiety, and I think it's just higher rates of anxiety for them. And I don't even want to get into surrogates because the child forms a relationship, obviously, energetically, nutritionally, with the mother who's being the surrogate. And then you rip that child away. That's just a recipe for dysfunction. But dolphin-assisted water births, they're banned in the U.S. They are permitted in Mexico and other places in the world. And what happens is the birthing mother, I'm not going to say birthing person, but the pregnant woman gets on the water And the dolphins, with their sonar, can detect that the woman's pregnant and will use their sonar allegedly to induce the pregnancy, create a sense of comfort for the child and mother. And the child is born, and the rates of math and verbal proficiency are like 20% higher with a dolphin assisted water birth. Just saying. Just saying. That is that is some esoteric wisdom. So I would start talking to your peers about dolphin birth. Get this information out there. Let's make it mainstream. What do you say? Okay, now we are going to talk about one of the most delicious topics on the menu, and that is Palantir. We didn't talk about Palantir. We talked about Andrel. And Palantir, man, Palantir is so freaky. They're in the news a lot now. Like they have all these government contracts. They're in Gaza, they're in Ukraine. And what they do is build up a surveillance network of all Americans. They're spending $30 billion. They're a $30 billion data mining company. And what they do is, you've ever been to Target and you've maybe seen these videos online of people at Target getting popped for shoplifting. Target has some of the most advanced security technology and apparatus in the world. It's like cutting edge, bleeding edge stuff. Facial recognition, financial surveillance, etc., etc. The FBI and intelligence agencies work with Target. They actually will wait until you steal enough that it meets the threshold of grand larceny, over $1,000, and then they will surprise you with a visit from the police. So they record all that and sit there, and then boom, pop you. But what happens is these private institutions, when you go to check out there, you're on camera, you swipe your card, there is no obligation on the part of Target to keep that data private. You've consented to giving that over. And they are obviously, one of their businesses is obviously selling that data to government agencies, institutions like Palantir, who now are able to map your face to your credit card. They're able to map your gait, so the style of your walking, which is as unique for each individual as a fingerprint, to your face, to your name, to your data, to the address you get packages shipped to, and they just create a database about you. It's crazy. And here's the thing, like people, not saying they're pious, but people will sort of sneer down at your nose and be like, well, I have nothing to hide. It's like, neither do I, dude. I'm going tits to the wind on this podcast, putting myself out there. But here's the thing, if there were ever a tyrannical government, which the paradox of that is when it's happening, there's only a few people who realize it's happening. Like the fact that our government doesn't actually represent us anymore. How do you organize and pose a real check? The people are supposed to be able to be the check and balance on the execution or exercise of power of the government. And the only way we can do that is if we pose a legitimate, formidable threat, the ability to uprise and overthrow. I'm not condoning that, but that is how the power dynamics are kept in check with Congress. We have to pose a formidable threat so they will actually bend the knee and serve our needs and not become tyrannical. With stuff like Palantir, it is harder to do that. It is harder to privately organize. The founding fathers wrote letters under fake names. Anonymity is a tool of the people to pose a check on the power of tyrannical tendencies of the government. This isn't left versus right. This is just mechanics of democracy. We don't get to have a left versus right in that discussion if the very mechanics of the government aren't working the way they're intended to. Come on, people. This is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Be more, I'm not shaming anyone, but please be more considerate of how you are turning over your data. Use cash. Cash is legal tender. If you go to a place and say they only accept credit card, they actually can't deny you goods or services on that basis. They have to accept cash. You go to I've been to a coffee place and they were like, oh, we're only cashless. Well, I have cash and it's legal tender and you have to accept that. Boom, they do. Here's a story. I spent some time in China, and I observed while I was there the surveillance apparatus, which was impressive and oppressive and omnipresent. It was everywhere. And when you would go to the subway, there would be security guards there with an X-ray belt that you had to put your belongings into, and you had to get patted down. For the first few times, I adhered to this and I abided, and I got pat down. But then I was watchful, and I looked around and saw that the quick-moving business guys would breeze past these security guards, not put their stuff in the X-ray, just breeze past, and they seemingly were let go. And I realized it was a form of security theater to give the impression that the security apparatus was larger and more invasive than it actually was. It was theater. It was the Wizard of Oz. And so I really got curious about this, and I looked into things like the TSA. When you go to the TSA, and they say, "Can you please step to the left so I can take a photo?" Most of us abide by that. But they don't have the constitutional power to do this. And one time, and I'll be honest, I was a little nervous to do it because I discovered that you can actually decline that. So I go to the TSA guy, and he's like, "Can you please step in front of the camera for a photo?" And I looked at him, I said, "No, thank you." And he said, "All right, have a nice day. Try it. You don't have to. It is theater. You have to go through the X-ray, take off your shoes and all that, but you do not have to give over your personal data. It's a Fourth Amendment violation. It's your personal property. Your likeness is yours. You have to consent to give that over by doing things like checking out a Target and using their services and turning over your face, your card information, your address, your gate. It's crazy. Moving on, and I hope you're with me. Thank you. I know I'm a little all over the place, but I think this is fun, and I'm just exploring a new topic. I want to talk about this guy. What I'm holding in my hand for those listening is a mega can of Monster Energy, and I'm guilty of drinking it. Listen, I'm a flawed guy. I'm not perfect, and in full transparency, the ideals I preach about knowing, how you speak to water and stuff like that, like Masaru Emoto, Dr. Emoto. I can't always follow. I'm human, okay? But I want to talk about the Monster Energy. We talked in maybe 2 episodes ago, or the quantum episode, maybe episode 4, about Dr. Masaru Emoto's experiments on water, where he found that the words you speak to water actually affect their crystalline structure. When you speak negatively, there's disarray. When you speak positively, the water molecules lock into a beautiful crystalline form. Here in my hand, I'm holding a can of Monster Energy. And this sounds a little tropish, but hear me out, because we know the water experiments are real. First of all, the can says monster. Second of all, the monster claw, in Hebrew, those symbols are sixes, 666. And on the can, it says, "Unleash the beast." Now, I'm not here to be all religiously psychotic or paranoid about this, but let's be honest. Like, we know that the way you speak to water affects the molecular structure. Do you think that packaging it in a aluminum can with all these chemicals and monster branded on it, and when you reach for it, you say, "Oh, I'll have a monster"? What does that do to the molecules in the water? Probably not good things. Really likely not good things. What about liquid death? Let me have a liquid death. Just those words. What do you think that's doing to the water in that can? It's not good. Listen, liquid death is the one thing I haven't drank in for this reason. Because I can get water elsewhere and seltzer elsewhere. And I am not drinking something called liquid death. Yes, as I sit here with a monster in my hand. I'm trying to be better. We live in a world where these are all, I think, challenges the universe throws at us, and it's impossible to avoid entirely. But just be conscious of it. I think that is an important first step. Lastly, I would like to talk about AI and the 3 reactions to change. I'm actually currently coding an app. I hope to share with you guys at some point, but I'm using an AI agent to basically vibe code, where instead of me writing the code, I meticulously and very thoughtfully and deliberately describe in detail what it is I want in piecemeal. And then I have to run through the prototype and try it out. If something's broken, I report back and say, "Hey, when I went to do this action, it didn't quite follow through to the conclusion I'm looking for. Can you please inspect that? The agent does that, and it's sort of a rinse and repeat process. I was sharing that with someone, and my therapist who I was meeting with today overheard, and he was like, I want to talk about that because one of the largest artists in the world right now is an AI music artist. And I'll tell you her name. It's pretty amazing. Zania Monet. It's cracking Billboard's adult R&B, and it's AI. Unbelievable. I mean, the ramifications for the creatives are crazy, and it's existential in that we have to think, what does our relationship to creation actually mean? How is it defined? There is skill in being able to thoughtfully prompt, though. And I wouldn't think about it so much as distancing ourselves from the art, but rather uptaking the role of director and guiding these tools as collaborators to execute on our vision. And that in itself is an art. So there are three reactions to change in the world and with AI. The first one is to resist it, the Luddite. The Luddite focuses on romanticization of the past, the fear of job loss, and how resistance can be futile but emotionally satisfying. They take gratification in resisting that. Oh, I'm not going to resist that. I'm going to do music the old-fashioned way. I'm going to write a book the old-fashioned way. You see this a lot on Reddit. Again, this isn't a shame of people. These are natural sort of cognitive dissonant reactions to change, where in order to avoid your world being destabilized, you latch on to the fact that, oh, that's not the right way to do this. You catastrophize. Oh, everything, this industry is being blown up. It's ruined. Music isn't the same anymore. It's almost like a stage of grief. The next reaction is to embrace it, and this is the early adopter. You discuss the immediate shift, the excitement for new tools, but also recognize there's a little hesitancy. Like you're an early adopter, but you recognize the danger in adopting it fully. You haven't fully embraced it, but you're going to use it because you recognize that the change is happening and you have to embrace it, right? The third one, and this is the most exciting, are the people who not just embrace it, but leverage change, and in this case, AI, is a multiplier. The strategist, we will call him or her. And this is the key takeaway. AI shouldn't just replace work, it should multiply human capability. It can speed up research for things like drugs. It can automate mundane tasks like email. It can allow someone like me who has a lot of ideas for app creation to direct these agents to be working in the background on these creations and bring the things in my head to life. It breaks down that barrier. What an exciting opportunity. What a great thing. What an exciting update we've just gotten to the game of life. This is awesome. And it's, you know what? It's going to be okay. I understand the resistance and the catastrophizing and like, holy smokes, the world is going to end or I don't know what I'm going to do. Yes, but you have to detach from the old way and say, you know what? There's a new opportunity here and I have to be a leaf riding a stream. And the way I'm taken on the stream is not always going to be the way I envision. But if I trust the current, I know it'll get me to where I need to go along the stream. Not exactly in the way I've chalked up, but it'll get me there. And that is sweet. That is sweet. And you know what? It's going to be okay. And I'd encourage you to play with tools online. Explore it a little bit. It is weird, for sure. But amongst all this change, you got to anchor yourself and stabilize yourself by focusing on things like values, things that can weather these storms of change, the relationships you have with your family and friends, your passions, your interests. That the scenery changes. That's just the game of life. But who you are and what you value remains the same. The exciting challenge for all of us is just figuring out how we apply that in these new shifting contexts of life. So, in closing, We've talked about the analog vices, excuse me. The last defiant drag on a cigarette that tastes like a bygone decade. We've talked about the biological miracle of water births alongside dolphins, a scene so profoundly organic, so untamed, it barely feels like it belongs on this planet anymore. Then, we slammed headfirst into the data gods. We've seen the Palantir machine, the monster of perfect prediction, quietly compiling the spreadsheet of our collective destiny. It doesn't care if your life is a beautiful mess. It only cares about the pattern. And the pattern, my friends, is always one step ahead of the chaos we call life. That's the friction we live in now, isn't it? On one side, you have the ridiculous, wonderful, vulnerable, unoptimized human. The one who still lights up a smoke to feel cool. AI can't do that. Smoking's going to be the last thing to be displaced by AI. Mark my words. The one who wears stupid shoes with wheels in them because gliding is infinitely better than walking. Walking's going extinct. That's the person whose water you're worried about. The structure of its crystals being ruined by a cheap energy drink. On the other side, you have algorithmic finality, the AI that sees you not as a person, but as a probability curve. It doesn't get irony. It doesn't appreciate the aesthetic defiance of an old habit. It just sees inefficiency. It misses the texture of what it means to be a human being. And that's why the choice is ours right now. We can be the ones who resist the current, shouting at the cloud, clutching our old habits like talismans against the future. We can be the ones who embrace it, drowning in the flood of new tools until we forget how to think for ourselves. Or we can choose the third way, leverage it. We can take this terrifying, powerful logic, this AI that sees every pattern, and use it not to automate our humanity away, but to free it. Use the perfect prediction to buy us more time for imperfect art. Use the efficiency to make space for genuine, glorious, human inefficiency. Because in a world where everything can be streamlined, mapped, and solved, the only thing truly valuable will be the things that cannot be quantified. Your terrible podcast idea, your strange, beautiful vice, the simple, stupid joy of rolling instead of walking. So go ahead, light it up, strap up those wheels, and get weird. Because the only thing that can save us from the cold perfection of the algorithm is the warm, beautiful stupidity of being truly, messily human. Thank you for tuning in. And if you like this podcast, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm Taylor Morris, and this has been an episode of The Taylor Morris Show. And until next time, stay curious.